story begins when our main character meets the Ice Queen. The Ice Queen accuses the protagonist of abandoning his friends in a deadly place to get to her. At this moment, the hero was not entirely sure whether that place was really as dangerous as the Ice Queen believed. But even if this place is dangerous, the main character is still confident in his guys. They are strong and cannot be defeated so easily. The main character asked the Ice Queen if he killed her here now, would all this horror end? This question did not cause anything but laughter from the Ice Queen, and her smile was so scary and evil that it became uneasy. She is surprised that the main character is going to finish her off, and tells him that he knows nothing about this world. The main character is trying to shut up the Queen. He doesn't want to talk to her, but wants to finish her off as quickly as possible. He tells the Ice Queen that now is not the time to stand around and just shake the air. And he also warns that now he will kill the Queen and the whole nightmare, all the horror that she has done, will end. The main character grips the sword tighter in his hands and rushes towards the Queen at full speed, and they begin a battle that will decide the future fate of not only them, but the fate of the whole world. As soon as two equal opponents clashed in a duel, the battle was equal. The opponents over and over again delicately dodged each other's insanely powerful attacks. The Ice Queen, bouncing like a bird, soars high into the air, and suddenly, he appears right in front of the main character in full combat readiness. A bright charge of unknown energy splashes and wriggles in her hand. The main character clearly did not expect such energy clots in the Ice Queen's hand. The Queen releases a charge of energy, but misses, because the hero manages to jump to the side at the last second, not allowing her to even hit him. From a powerful shock wave, it slides along the ground, leaving behind tongues of dust. The hero strains every muscle in his legs and jumps as hard as he can, as if pushing the ice floor even deeper. And being in the air, he spins the sword with such speed and force that the sword leaves behind a bright purple shining color. And at the moment of landing, with amazing accuracy, it hits the Ice Queen's chest. After such a strong attack from the main character, the room was destroyed, and behind him the wounded Queen sat on her knees. But that's not the end. She just smiled and said that the battle was fun. But the hero certainly does not share her views on the past and very risky battle. Suddenly, a huge clot of blue energy bursts out of the Ice Queen's chest. This phenomenon occurs thanks to the main character. He absorbs the power of the Ice Queen. His body will enter a state of hibernation until he completely absorbs her core. Previously 0 o'clock South Pole, the last dungeon located there. This blue glow forming a circle is the Ice Queen's nest. Callie, a big and strong-muscled guy, hits the ice rock, causing its pieces to fly several meters away. He is furious and cannot imagine that everyone can die just like that. After all, having come all the way here, only one person can climb the stairs and Sky, a beautiful and sweet girl with a staff with a purple gem at the end, wants Callie to calm down. She asks everyone to make an informed decision, to quickly choose the one who will rise to the Ice Queen, because the guys don't have time anyway. And Sky decides that it is our main character, who is called the Gloomy Ghost, who should rise, and he is very surprised by this decision. The guy in the hat corrects it, and says that he supports Sky's decision. He believes that they will be at a disadvantage if they go up against an enemy with ice abilities. This decision made Callie incredibly angry, because it was he who wanted to demonstrate his abilities and go first into battle. But after a while, he calms down, because even in his heart it seems to him that there is no one better than a gloomy ghost for such a candidate. So he involuntarily agrees with Sky's decision. The girl with the katana on her back notes that if Callie agreed so quickly, then the decision can be considered unanimous. He considered this an insult to himself and boiled a little. She also believes that it is the gloomy ghost who must rise to the Ice Queen. And this is, at first glance, a difficult decision. I accept absolutely everything, causing the gloomy ghost to worry a little. Our main character is unsure of himself and asks the others if they will regret their choice. And the guy in the hat tells him that if they die because the gloomy ghost could not defeat the Ice Queen, then of course they will regret it. However, everyone knows what the gloomy ghost is capable of, and therefore they trust him. Sky is confident in his decision. She knows that he will do everything to defeat the Ice Queen. And all the guys standing a few meters from the gloomy ghost once again tell him that they believe in him. But thinking about the past, the gloomy ghost speaks a word filled with pain, and it is a word of regret. 25 years later, with the advent of 2024, a monster appeared that humanity was unable to cope with. On stage in front of the audience, An unknown woman talks about how the Ice Queen froze the entire Pacific Ocean with one wave of her hand, and that she was a completely unusual monster, since she was capable of such a thing, because after she appeared, everyone lost hope and only 5 dared to try to change everything. The boy holds out his hand and shouts that this operation was called Conquest of the Nest. The man on the stage friendlily praises the guy for his knowledge at such a young age. The host of the event calls these 5 legendary players who performed the greatest feats in the history of all mankind. And now those who took part in the salvation of all humanity are called the 5 heroes. Due to the fact that the Ice Queen was defeated by the heroes, many safe zones appeared on Earth, and in connection with this, the presenter does not have time to finish when the boy jumps up and points his finger at the statue. He saw that it had moved. The presenter does not count such an answer, calling it incorrect, because she considers it impossible, and he says that the internal temperature of this reinforced glass wall is monitored around the clock, so that these very statues, under no circumstances, are damaged. She hears a sound behind her, turns back to the statue and notices something strange. But excitedly, he turns back to the audience and says that nothing will happen to these statues. Suddenly, the Ice statue of a gloomy ghost becomes covered with cracks and bursts, filling everyone sitting in the hall with fear. And the same player who defeated the Ice Queen in battle many years ago falls to the floor from lack of strength. The absorption rate of the Ice Queen's power became 100%. The gloomy ghost becomes very cold, because he has completely absorbed the core, and has been an ice exhibit for many, many years. The main character, gathering all his strength, raises his head and tries to understand what is happening. But seeing the hall in front of him, and such a large number of people, he realizes that he has no idea where he is. We watch as the whole world learns about the awakening of a dark ghost who was in a cryogenic state for 25 years. It was this player who defeated the Ice Queen. While in the hospital, he watches all the news, which only talks about the awakened hero, who psychologically still cannot realize that 25 years have passed. Our main character does not feel the strength in his hands and thinks that this is to blame for his long cryogenic sleep, because he cannot even clench his fist. The gloomy ghost notices that his hand is still shaking, which he is not at all happy about, and his peace is disturbed by the working staff of the hospital, or rather the doctor, nurse and nurse. They draw attention to themselves by calling the hero by name, and report that the president is already heading to him. He doesn't want to see this president if he doesn't know him, because the ghost can't stand being bothered just like that. The doctor notes that the president always spoke of the main character as a close friend, and the gloomy ghost tries to remember what kind of person the doctor is telling him about, because there are not many people who could call the gloomy ghost a friend. The main character remembers his team of heroes, who are still just ice statues exuding only cold. The gloomy ghost thanks the doctor for the information. He no longer wants to rack his brains, and decides to find out what kind of person calls him a friend, already upon meeting. The hero is distracted from his thoughts and looks out the window and realizes that the world has changed a lot over the past 25 years. He remembers with regret the children who fought, playing with death, in order to achieve only one goal: a safe world. The gloomy ghost realizes that all he can do is fight and has no idea where he will work. Be that as it may, our main character certainly understands that hiding his identity no longer makes sense. And now he can, without a drop of fear, take off his mask and show his face. The staff again disturbs the gloomy ghost. They come in at the moment when he was no longer wearing a mask, and the doctor shouts why he took it off. And the main character answered him that now he lives in a safe world, and clarifies that only the hero is not needed now. The doctor is very worried, and the gloomy ghost just doesn't understand their worried reaction. 3 people in black suits, including the president, enter the room, and he wants to explain to the gloomy ghost what is so bad about him taking off his mask. The main character screams in surprise. Apparently he did not expect to see this man at all. Taku, who is still unknown to us, but is it him? The president asks the staff to leave them alone with the gloomy ghost, and of course they comply with the order. He calls the hero by the name of Jun-ho and notices that he has not changed at all over the past 25 years. The gloomy ghost is happy. He recognizes the voice of his friend and smiles widely. The hero seems glad that the person who was going to bother him and called him a friend turned out to be namely Taku. The hero notices a bald spot in the shape of the letter M on his friend's head, and laughs hard, because he said that over the years he will have it, Taka doesn't like this and he reproaches Junho for the fact that after such a long sleep, he decided to say exactly this. The president is perplexed, because he expected a touching reunion of two friends, to which the gloomy ghost is surprised that Taka was expecting such a thing. The gloomy ghost continues to joke, and does not understand why, after 25 years, people have not yet created a cure for baldness, to which his friend increasingly understands that Junho has remained the way he remembered him, and the hero himself says that Taku is not at all has changed, apart from the appearance of course. The hero finally asks why the doctors were so worried when they saw him without a mask, because everything was over a long time ago. And Taku explains that 25 years ago, when the gloomy ghost and his team conquered the Ice Queen's nest, all players received the same notifications. It was a message about the victory over the Ice Queen, and all the heroes were incredibly happy at this seemingly happy ending. People all over the world hugged each other and laughed as safe zones began to appear on Earth. However, this same world did not allow the joy to last even 1 minute. Everyone also received a notification that an interspatial elevator had been installed in the Pacific Ocean, the second floor. Everyone was terribly frightened, since now movement into the interspatial zone had become possible. People were indignant. They refused to believe in such a thing and called everything that was happening simple nonsense. They understood, most likely, the murder of the Ice Queen was not the end. After everything that happened, players from all over the world, the association and politicians gathered to hold a meeting. And as a result of a protracted meeting, it was decided to send an advance group to the border zone. The second floor became a land of opportunity for humanity. It not only mastered magic and technology, but also received many resources and new knowledge. The gloomy ghost listens carefully and asks what bad happened in the end, because at first glance, everything should be just fine. Taku explains that thanks to all this, the abundant land arose, and now there are only 10 floors, but the hero is upset, because he did not want to hear such a thing. And also, the president says that in the interdimensional elevator there are buttons from the 1st to the 10th floors, and the hero thinks. There is dissonance in the hero's head, because he and the guys had to spend 5 years in order to defeat the Ice Queen. After that, if they calculated 5 floors, they should now be on the 7th. However, compared to the gloomy ghost team, the level of the rest of the players was much lower. Therefore, just the 5 of them went to the South Pole to overthrow the Ice Queen. Junho asks Taka how many floors they took over in the end. His friend begins to worry and is silent for a long time. The gloomy ghost begins to worry and asks him to answer his question. And Taka replies that over the past 25 years, humanity has only been able to master 2 floors. Shocked by such terrible information, the hero is simply trying to digest everything he heard. The gloomy ghost is very upset by this outcome of events. He definitely did not expect this, and falls on the bed out of hopelessness. Dyaku, no less upset, simply explains that he has nothing more to say. Junho just can't believe that 25 years have passed and things have taken a terrible turn, because he thought he woke up in a safe world. The main character cannot believe that over the past 25 years, humanity has only been able to reach the 2nd floor. The president asks the gloomy ghost to listen to him, because there is a reason for this. The hero agrees to listen to his friend. He can't wait to find out about the problem that has arisen. But in fact, the gloomy ghost is furious and wants to hear how stupid people are, who in 25 whole years have only reached the 2nd floor. And Taka says that everything is caused by the Ice Queen's core, which Junho absorbed, but his friend doesn't know about it yet. The main character realizes that the Ice Queen's core is in him, and so far does not understand at all what is happening. A friend says that the environment of the 3rd floor is similar to a volcanic zone, so only a few players who are resistant to the heat of magma can go there. But after some time on the 3rd floor, in the middle of the lava ocean, players were able to discover an altar that required the Ice Queen's core to cool the environment. Taka says he is ashamed because he searched the Queen's nest tens of thousands of times but never found the core. And the hero, with visible awkwardness and a bit of shame, explains to his friend that he has absorbed this core. He also reassures his friend, because everyone can make mistakes, and you shouldn't be upset about it. The gloomy ghost asks to understand him if he also makes any mistake. And Taku, with wild joy on his face, agrees not to blame the gloomy ghost for his mistakes. The main character does not know when to tell the truth about the Queen's core in order to hear the least amount of grumbling. Junho asks how his friend is doing, and they begin a friendly conversation that lasts until sunset. Taka notices that he and the gloomy ghost have been talking for a very long time and calls the hero to eat, to which he refuses. It is very strange that he has not gotten hungry in 25 years of sleep. The hero picks up a brochure depicting the Seoul History Museum, which invites you to look at the 5 sleeping heroes and asks Dyaku if this place is popular, to which Jun-ho's friend reacts very strangely as he decides not to answer this question. Taka gets up from his chair and warns that he is going to the first floor, which is now full of people and journalists, so he thinks that going down there together would not be the best idea. The gloomy ghost asks if he can go through the emergency exit, and Taku allows him go down, but on the condition that the hero will then immediately return to the hospital, and Jun-ho accepts the order. Some time later, we see a gloomy ghost at the entrance door of the Seoul Museum. He passes through it, and the security system notifies that the authentication was successful. Jun-ho stops briefly at the skeleton of an extinct dinosaur hanging on the ceiling, examines it and moves on, when he suddenly notices a door behind which his friends are most likely located, imprisoned in ice statues. He opens the door, goes to the end of the room and comes face to face with those with whom he feels he was just talking yesterday. Jun-ho sits down and apologizes to his friends for not coming to them earlier. He begins to tell the guys about what the world is like today, how much better it has become, and with both pride and pain in his heart, he announces that they were able to protect the world that everyone had dreamed of. Therefore, now, I wish the guys, thanks to whom the world is what it is now, to rest in peace. Jun-ho, taking a bottle in his hands, pours alcohol into glasses for each of the legendary heroes, and with regret, which covered him more and more, he drinks his to a safe world. He notices that a lot of dust has accumulated on the statues and begins to brush it off. But as soon as the hero touches the statue, he is notified that his mastery of the freezing skill has been confirmed. He also hears that he does not have enough magic parameters to remove the ice cover, and the gloomy ghost, who has just said goodbye to his friends, understands that by learning the freezing skill, he will be able to remove the ice cover from his friends and does not believe in what is happening. The main character asked himself if it was possible to remove the ice cover and bring his friends back to life, who, like him, had been as ice statues for 25 years. Juno was simply horrified. His magic indicator was 18 units, which is very bad for a player like him. The gloomy ghost realized that restoring his abilities and his level of magic would not be possible in a day or two, but it was still possible. He thought about it, and decided that his level of freezing skill was the key to solving the problem. Jun-ho remembered that Taka told him that there is simply nothing above level S. The level of the main character is EX, and it seems that the gloomy ghost is the very first. But the main problem is with magic, and it is this that needs to be solved as quickly as possible. He notes that he was given the title of S only after he was able to defeat the Ice Queen, and that the gloomy ghost was given the title of the hero who brought spring. Jun-ho studies information about levels and reads that each time he rises one floor in the interdimensional elevator, the values of all indicators increase by 30 points. And he thought that if we assume that by going up the floors he can restore his level, then the hero will not only be able to significantly improve his abilities, but he will be able to completely subjugate the Ice Queen's power, and then be able to melt the ice and save his friends. With a wild zeal to achieve his goal, Jun-ho promised the still dead ice statues that hearts inside a piece of ice would start beating again, and his friends would continue to save this unsafe world. We again find ourselves in the hospital where our main character was lying, from the windows of which we could hear the cry of Taku, who was very surprised that the gloomy ghost wants to recover and be in the status of a hero. Jun-ho said that the president knew this very well, because the gloomy ghost does not know anything else but how to be a player. Dyaku showed his level of surprise and said that this was very unexpected news, since the hero had already said that he wanted to retire. But Jun-ho reminded that it was a whole 25 years ago. In any case, be that as it may, the president did not think this was a very good idea. The gloomy ghost asked for the reason why Dyaku thought his reinstatement as a player was not the best decision, and he explained that, for starters, Jun-ho should get a good rest, and also, the reason why the main character should not be restored was because of the demons. Demons are players who use their awakened powers to satisfy their own desires. They engage in illegal activities, murder and terrorism, and can be called a malignant tumor of society. Jun-ho was a little surprised. He had seen similar footage, but in those days when the gloomy ghost was quite strong, no one could take a breath in front of him. Taka notes that it was a long time ago, but now everything is different. Starting from the second floor, there are no surveillance cameras or satellites installed there. Moreover, no country has any means left to suppress the demons. It seems they have tasted life. At least now, the gloomy ghost realized why the president was against his return. He was simply worried about him in a friendly way. Junho asked Taka whether these demons still hated him to this day, to which he replied that the mere thought of killing a gloomy ghost delighted them. Therefore, the president, as a friend, asked Junho not to even think about this idea. And the main character succumbed to thoughts. He believed that the only way to return safely was to change his name. Taka was at a loss. He still didn't understand why Junho needed this. To which the gloomy ghost solemnly said, raising his spoon up, that he wanted to get to the 10th floor. Taka was not sure about the hero, so he asked why suddenly he could climb to the 10th floor. But Junho reminded that there was simply no way to get through the 3rd floor with the volcanic zone, and the president confirmed this information. And the gloomy ghost, looking around suspiciously, said that he knew one way. Taka was simply stunned, because he had been trying to find a solution for many years, but could not. The president, like a child, screamed and jumped, trying to finally hear at least the assumptions from Junho, and the hero clarified whether the Ice Queen core was needed, to which Taka responded positively. And as we already understand, the gloomy ghost finally told Taka that he had absorbed the Ice Queen's core. The president was simply furious. He screamed so loudly that birds even flew off from the roof of the hospital. Juno tried to explain himself, because he did not want to absorb it. The core itself was absorbed into him as soon as he finished off the queen. Taka's blood pressure shot up. He grabbed his head and tried to realize that he was this crazy guy's friend. The main character noticed that in any case, thanks to the Ice Queen's core, he had the ability to freeze. The president became interested in this new skill of the gloomy ghost, because with the help of this ability it would be possible to cool down all the heat located on the 3rd floor. And Dyaku began to guess that the reason why Junho wanted to recover was because of his friends, and asked the main character about it. To which the gloomy ghost, with a calm look and full of confidence, responded positively. The president noted that this was good news, and for a minute there was deathly silence in the room. And Taka decided to help his friend. He was going to start by at least dealing with the doctors who saw Junho's face. At least that's all he can do to help at the moment. And the gloomy ghost called him his best comrade. The main character remembered that his level and all stats had been reset, and told Taku about it. Junho also asked the president to give him a new player's license. But Taku remembered that he forgot to say something to the gloomy ghost. And he informed the hero that guilds are now more powerful than associations, to which, jumping out of bed, Junho asked whether the associations had lost the right to issue licenses. But the friend reassured the gloomy ghost, saying that this was not what he meant. He wanted to tell you that in large guilds it is now customary to attend exams in person to obtain a license, and also that Junho's license can only be confirmed if he passes an open exam. It became clear that even such a large person as Taku, who is the president of the Players Association, cannot help here, and the main character gets upset, falling flat on the bed. However, Taka said that this exam is a great chance for the gloomy ghost, and he explained that they needed a reason if he would completely support Junho. In other words, the main character needs to get the best results so that everyone wants to get their hands on it. Junho got out of bed and said that he understood perfectly well what he would need to do, and now all he has to do is wait for the exam and demonstrate everything he is capable of. We are transported to the Players Association, to the place where we take the exam to obtain a license. Junho was given his serial number, which is responsible for the queue of those taking the exam. He notes that the Players Association spent a lot of money to conduct the exam. The atmosphere within the walls of the association is relaxed. Everyone is fussing around Junho. Someone even tries to take the exam on their own, but security immediately stops people, explaining to them that they can only enter by invitation. Our main character calmly sat down on the bench, knowing at the same time that his turn would not come soon. Since he would have to wait a long time, he decided to eavesdrop on the conversations of the other participants. Junho activated his Dark Guardian skills and enhanced hearing in order to eavesdrop on anyone from a great distance. Someone said that the ancient dungeon on the 2nd floor had finally been conquered. Someone thought that today's examiner would be the president of the Taku Association himself. Well, Someone was worried about failing the exam already in fourth time, and having overheard the conversations hovering around Junho, he realized that there was nothing to worry about and everything was quite peaceful. Finally, the first candidate was called to take the exam, which the main character watched closely. The exam begins, the first test taker entered the room, picking up something like a spear, and the clock began counting the time. And Junho, in turn, still carefully watched what was happening. Before taking the exam, small figures appear, resembling people, but at the same time very small in stature, and in their hands they hold one-bladed weapon, similar to swords. The two guys who were sitting next to Junho noticed that the guy taking the exam had an impressive fighting spirit. The monsters that appeared were frightened by the guy with the spear, making a dash with the spear in their direction, and are now retreating. At this moment, those sitting next to the main character notice that the guy will easily pass the exam, and even that they envy him. But Junho is not so sure of this. Our hero noted that if someone wants to secure the area around him, a spear is ideal, thereby praising the guy taking the exam. But he also said that when the enemy is approaching, you cannot swing a spear. This action will only make things worse. What actually happens is that the participant in the test fails it, since the monsters were able to get close to him by carelessly waving a spear. Junho realized that most likely the entire exam would continue in this spirit. And finally the 75th issue was announced, or rather our main character Junho. The examiners are very disappointed, since they are almost finished, but in the end, they didn't like a single participant, because they didn't even meet the basic requirements. To which Taka demanded that they quickly finish the selection and let in the next participant. June finally entered the testing room, and the examiners tensed and were very surprised. One of the examiners asked the main character, number 75, if he was ready to start the test. To which Junho, silently turning his head towards them, calmly nodded, giving an affirmative answer. And then, the examiners announced the start of the test for our main character, who also has a spear in his hands and a quiver of arrows behind his back, in front of Junho, who are physically inferior to the average man. The main character noticed that these dwarfs look very realistic up close, but the examiners can try to imitate their opponents as much as they want. Junho was flooded with memories of old times, of his battles, which he absolutely loved. And fully armed, he was ready for battle, shouting a cry to the goblins so that they would finally attack, and the goblins would gladly rush towards the enemy. The dwarves tried to catch the gloomy ghost by surprise by jumping on top of him, but he was ready, despite the number of goblins, and taking a fighting stance, while swinging properly. With just one swing of his spear, Junho cut the goblins in half. The dwarfs were shocked and looking at their evaporating brothers. They were not a little scared. But no matter how many goblins the gloomy ghost killed, their number only increased, and he did not understand the meaning of the test. A little lost in thought, the hero almost let the dwarfs approach him from behind. But the gloomy ghost had a great reaction, and turning sharply, he fired a blade at each of the dwarfs, sending them back to the simulation. The others, realizing who they were dealing with, began to run away from Junho as quickly as possible. But it is useless. The gloomy ghost took out a bow and skillfully shot an arrow into each of the dwarfs. And he noticed that his friend, Gilberto Green, the same guy in the hat who is the ice statue in the museum, taught him to shoot so well. The goblins, seeing Junho's bow, began to run towards him from different directions, trying to somehow get to him. And the gloomy ghost was ready and announced the last type of weapon, a katana, which he quickly took out of its case and cut the distance in front of him. Junho visually outlined the space around himself, upon entering which the enemy would be destroyed by his blade. And with a smile on his face, he masterfully chopped goblins left and right, with amazing ease. The gloomy ghost was surprised that he felt pain, when suddenly the examiners announced that participant number 75 had successfully completed the test and congratulated him. The main character can barely stand on his feet. He noticed that if he is tired of this funny battle, then he definitely needs to do physical training, since there will be more difficult opponents in the future. The female examiner said that her eyes deceived her. Another noted that this participant was not just a copycat of a gloomy ghost, but he deftly wielded the field, threw knives and shot accurately from a bow, and that even his fencing art was at its best, and mainly his skill handling weapons is amazing. The pumped-up examiner noticed that the participant had a thin physique, but despite this he was able to surprise them. Another female examiner opened the profile of the gloomy ghost and noticed that he only had one skill, weaponry, and decided that he was level D. The muscleman said that if the gloomy ghost has a level D, then during further training there will be many restrictions, since wielding a weapon is not even an auxiliary skill of Jun-ho, but the main one. All the other examiners also doubted the gloomy specter. They were not sure that their investment would pay off and were determined not to take the difficult path. Taku, drinking tea from a mug, thought that there should be no problems with Jun-ho joining the Players Association, and made a decision. In principle, he is happy, but the only thing that gnaws at him is that for the sake of the exam he faked the profile of a gloomy ghost. Our boss read the novel, and thought it was incredibly funny, and at the same time devoured chips and soda for real. The most respected player in the world, ranked number 1 and looked up to, is that dark ghost. Dyaku was very tense and asked himself to endure, but I couldn't, and called Jun-ho. He asked the gloomy ghost what he was reading, and he replied that he was reading a short story in which the main character is a priest, and in the short story they just fight, and do not do healing. Dyaku asked Jun-ho if the heroes he reads about so eagerly are crazy, but the main character simply showed surprise. Soon, the president distracted Jun-ho from reading and invited him to look at the materials that he asked him to give. Taku did not understand for what purpose the hero asked him for information about the unconquered gate, and asked if he was going to go there with his level. But Jun-ho was just about to do this, notifying the president about this, to which he responded with surprise. The main character said that no one has ever managed to conquer these gates, and that means something. A gate filled with various traps and monsters that attack everyone this time, and there are not even corpses left of the players who tried to conquer them. Therefore, gates that have never been captured are called unconquered gates. And the main thing is that beginners can get into this gate, but high-level players are not allowed to enter there, since novice players want to improve their strength. They burst into this gate as if it were a sail, and in the end, they lose their lives. But Taku, in turn, tried to dissuade Jun-ho, explaining to him that he should not go to conquer the gates in this state, but he asks his friend not to worry and not to forget who he is, and besides, an unconquered gate is a headache for the association. The president of the association confirmed Jun-ho's words, but also clarified that he did not want to let his friend go there. The main character did not doubt Taku's friendly love, but still said that he would go there, because it would be useful for him. It turns out that over time the rewards in the gate increase, and for many years the gate has not been conquered, therefore Jun-ho will be able to gain a huge amount of experience points. And Taku asked the hero why he chose such a dangerous place in order to increase his level, to which he, full of confidence in his eyes, answered his friend in the affirmative. But the president of the association reminded Jun-ho that he died and was resurrected, and it is possible to increase the level in a much safer way. And the main character, in turn, reminded Taku of his comrades who are now in ice captivity and are waiting for him to free them, and also said that in his place his friends would have done the same. But the friend did not agree, since in any case there is no need to take such risks and not get into trouble. And the main character said that this is not the only reason why he was going to risk his life so much, since sooner or later, he will still have to face the demons, and time is definitely not on his side, and therefore he must become strong enough to fight back at the right time. Taka finally understood him, saying that he really hadn't thought about demons, that he couldn't even imagine the pressure Jun-ho felt on himself. The main character did not consider this pressure, but thought that it was not worth telling the president about it. Taka realized that he couldn't do anything about it, and promised to find out which gate our main character could enter. And having studied the necessary material, the president came to the conclusion that Jun-ho could only enter an unconquered gate, and a gloomy ghost with interest and fighting spirit inside immediately asked about the location of this very gate. Taka began to tell the hero about the gate, or rather, that it appeared 7 years ago, and since then 142 people have tried to conquer it, but in the end they were eaten by monsters. Only first-level players can enter them, so this place is also called the Grave of Beginners. Jun-ho read the conditions of capture and found them not so difficult, but Dyaku is quite sure that the president didn't have time to finish speaking when something came to the hero's watch. Taka said that it was a deposit, and since now Jun-ho officially belongs to the association, then from now on, he is a subordinate of the president for the entire next year. The gloomy ghost was very surprised that he would now become his friend's subordinate, and therefore, with all the kindness of his heart, he decided to show Taku how a devoted servant should behave. to which his friend asked him not to overdo it. Junho asked Taku if he could stay in the Players' Association, because according to his memory, there is a building specially designated for heroes, and asks for a room with a good view, to which the president agrees since the gloomy ghost will definitely be safe here. Dyaku noted that if everything goes well, then perhaps he will be able to allocate an entire floor to Junho, but he said that this no longer depends on him, since Dyaku will force the hero to work hard. The president handed Junho the box containing his uniform, and he was surprised and worried, because he doesn't want to wear some strange uniform and hopes for the best. Having opened the box, the hero was delighted with what he saw. He liked the shape, which was not only light, but also elastic. Junho called the uniform incredibly cool, and Taku, of course, agreed with him, since this masterpiece was made by Kwan Noya himself, and upon hearing the name, our main character was surprised, opening his mouth wide. He cannot believe that this old man is still alive, and the president told the hero that Noah will soon turn 98 years old. He also noticed that the old man handed over his workshop to his grandson, but still works in it. The inspired Junho told Taku that in this case he would definitely drop by to say hello, but the president besieged the hero, saying that he needed to avoid such situations for his own safety. Junho thought that Taku suspected Noah, but he replied that he did not suspect the old man. And the hero came up with the idea himself. Someone is watching Noah's workshop and therefore it is better not to approach it. The president confirmed Junho's guesses and said that the demons are well aware of the relationship between the gloomy ghost and Kwan Noi, and if he meets him, he will reveal his true face. The hero agreed with Dyaku and explained that he, as a newcomer, would go abroad to meet Kwan Noi. People would definitely suspect something was wrong, but the president understood how Junho felt. So he put his hand on his shoulder and said that he conveyed to Kwan Noi what situation they were in and that the old man should understand them. The hero was upset, but Taku cheered him up, saying that as soon as he becomes stronger, everything will be different. Junho asked to thank Kwan Noi for his excellent form, and the president told the hero that of course he would pass it on. The gloomy ghost also tried to find out from Taku what weapon he should use now, but he replied that there were much cooler weapons in the warehouse of the Players' Association, and that he could choose any one he liked. The hero said that he was looking forward to the moment when he would have to choose a weapon, but the president asked him not to compare the association's weapons with Kwan Noi's weapons. Taka asked the gloomy ghost when he was going to go to capture the unconquered gate, and Junho replied that he wanted to do it right now, but thought about it, and decided that he should practice some more. He also reminded him that he was exhausted by the usual passing of the exam, and if he did not have sufficient physical preparation, he would not be able to fight either monsters or demons. The president listened carefully and replied that the hero had made the right decision and specified how long it would take him to train, about a month or two. But Junho replied that 10 days was enough for him. And at this moment we are transported 10 days ahead, to the city of Namyangju, to Mount Kanma. Junho set himself up for the capture with fire in his eyes, and with many years of experience behind him, he goes to the goal without hesitation. He enters them, but the condition of capture is just to hold out until dawn. Well, let's see how it ends. Our main character entered the unconquered gate, and as soon as he got to the other side, he said that, for reasons unknown to him, he felt at home here. Junho saw the graves and realized that if this place seemed cozy to him, then he was definitely going crazy. He once again studied the information, or rather the conditions of capture, and became convinced of their ease. Junho said under his breath that his goal was quite simple, he just needed to hold out until dawn, and that he had come at just the right time. And also after studying the received materials, he discovered that the teams that entered early in the morning lasted the longest. Also, time moves differently inside the gate. Those entering in the afternoon did not have time to adapt to the time distortion, and moreover, in all likelihood, they had to fight right away. And in the end, they found themselves in a hopeless situation, and then became simple corpses, because all the players were exclusively level 1 or lower. But our protagonist has prepared thoroughly, and is now in his best shape. Night fell and Junho felt as if he was being watched by dead people, and possibly evil spirits. And as soon as this greatly infuriated the hero, he stood up to look around. Suddenly a dead man jumped out of the ground and grabbed the main character by the leg, but Junho didn't even make a move. This even amused the gloomy ghost, and he put his katana on the dead man's head, telling him not to come out. Junho looked around, because he still felt the presence of someone else besides him and the dead man. As night fell, the hero's night hunter skill was activated, heightening all his senses, and our main character realized that around him there was just a horde of dead people with whom he needed to decide something. Junho noted that it is very difficult for beginners to deal with evil spirits, especially if they are zombies, since they do not feel pain, and the fact that it is impossible for them to deal a single killing blow creates problems, since zombies do not pay attention to the damage they receive and only focus on attacking. The gloomy ghost also noticed that the dead are excellent at causing panic among newcomers who do not yet have any developed abilities, and simultaneously destroying one zombie after another. And now Junho understood and felt perfectly why this place is called the Grave of Newcomers. But the gloomy ghost is, so to speak, already an experienced noob and therefore easily copes. Junho is not weak, and he certainly has the strength to get out of such a mess. He thought he was done chopping up the dead when he suddenly noticed that none of them were killed, and there were several times more enemies. Seemingly having dealt with the crowd of freaks, he said in a drawling voice that it was quite hard for him. The gloomy ghost sat down, leaning on the tombstone, hoping that the dead would not appear again. Suddenly, Junho heard something that he could not expect at all, but he heard a human voice, and he froze in fear, thinking that he must have imagined such a phenomenon. The main character tried to determine by his voice whether it was a person at all and from which direction he was shouting, and after he realized where the sound was coming from, he ran towards him. Having reached the place, in front of him lay a coffin from under which crying could be heard. He asked if the one who asked for help was downstairs, and received an affirmative answer. The hero began to quickly dig a hole with his hands in order to get to the man, simultaneously asking how the same one ended up in it in the first place. And while Junho was excavating, an unknown person explained to him that he trusted his friends and followed them into the gate, and as a result, everyone except him died. Hearing the circumstances, the gloomy ghost immediately became upset and froze in place, but he was awakened by the man's request to quickly get him out. The main character pulled himself together, came to his senses and asked the unknown person to scream loudly in order to understand his exact location. And after the hero heard that the sound was coming from the coffin, he sharply ran away from the pit. At the same time, he discharged the entire clip from the pistol into the coffin in which the person was supposedly located. And the gloomy ghost realized that this was a deception, and he told the unknown how he constantly thought about how these gates managed to so easily kill more than 100 people, and asked a rhetorical question whether it was the evil spirits in the coffin who created this very grave of newcomers. Suddenly, a huge monster, very little resembling a person, burst out of the ground and screamed, calling the main character a deceiver. The monster asked Junho how he knew about this while he took his katana out of its case, and in the next frame, the gloomy ghost already hits her with a powerful blow with his weapon, forcing the monster to fly several meters back, simultaneously answering that in an unconquered gate it is impossible for anyone to survive, since after the capture begins, the gate will not even open if at least one living player remains inside. Past players probably knew this too, but sometimes you act on automatic. And no wonder, even if you take into account all the zombies, it would not be so difficult to defeat them all. But the reason lay in the deceiver. After Junho killed all the monsters, he was notified of this wonderful achievement by a program, according to which the gloomy ghost received level 4. He also noticed that his previous stats returned to him after reaching every 5 levels. This is certainly not great, but the hero should also be happy about this. Studying everything he received, the gloomy ghost was afraid that that was all and he would not get anything else. How he receives a notification about receiving the skill of confessing a dead man, and he is glad that he got not some random thing, but a new skill. The hero learned the skill and realized that he could now see the memories of all the dead. And he thought about whether he received this skill for capturing or for killing the deceiver, and also thought about using this ability. And he noticed that the power was obtained as a player, Seo Junho, and not a gloomy ghost. Having held out until the morning, which hundreds could not, Junho watched the dawn, eagerly awaiting the events to come. The gloomy ghost sipped a cocktail while Taku read the newspaper and was surprised by what he read. After all, since the return of Junho, this world still cannot be silent, not a single calm day. At the same time, the president was glowing with happiness, which the hero noticed. Taku remarked that it was funny to see how nervous those arrogant bastards from the guild were, to which Junho was not surprised since the guild would not take such a risk by divulging information, and asked why the journalists continued to stir up trouble. The director tried to find out from the hero whether he was going to reveal himself or not, to which he replied that it was not time yet. Dyaku worries that if everyone finds out that a dark ghost has taken over the gate, he will become very in demand, to which Junho asks a friend that people buy luxury items even if all the things are made in the same factory. The president suggested that these things are simply expensive, and the hero agreed with him, because not everyone can afford them. Dyaku asked if Junho wanted to become a luxury product, but the hero replied that he wants to become not just an expensive thing, but an item that everyone wants to own, but no one knows where to get it. He needs to become a legendary limited edition. And the director suggested that the gloomy ghost wanted to warm up the audience, to which the hero agreed. Dyaku explained that sometimes a bad personality awakens in Junho, and clarified whether the hero's blood type is S. But the gloomy ghost ignored this question and said that, however, he could not make them wait so long. After all, smart people will be able to guess and think whether this guy will appear in other unconquered gates. That is why reporters will be waiting for his appearance at the unconquered gates. And the hero noticed that if this happens, he still does not have to declare himself on his own. The world itself must gradually find out everything. The director thought, since when did Junho worry about formalities? To which he became confused and did not understand what exactly he was talking about. But Taka said that it was nothing special, and called the hero to eat, fueling this with the fact that the warrior needs to eat well, to which he, of course, agreed. Some time later, we witnessed the training of a gloomy ghost, who by that time had already done 71 push-ups and a one-arm handstand. The last 2 push-ups were not at all easy for the hero, so much so that he almost fell. But showing character and explosive strength, he pulled himself up to 73 push-ups, after which, he fell to the ground screaming, extremely overworked and sore muscles. His strength value increased by 1 point. Junho, with a smile on his face and sweat dripping off his face like water, was glad that he had finished his workout. Next, he went for water and a towel, sat leaning on the wall, and sipped this free, but sweet, post-workout drink. He breathed a sigh of relief and said that he finally felt alive. Putting down the bottle of water and coming to his senses a little, the hero decided to look at his watch, to study which unconquered gate has a level suitable for it. And it seems like I found a Lufa garden, which has an entrance level from 5 to 10. This is the oldest unconquered gate of Korea, which appeared 9 years ago. If the gate is left alone for a long time, monsters will begin to crawl out of it, which will subsequently kill ordinary people. Such gates are called open, and the government and associations have offered a huge reward for the capture of the Lufa Garden. Therefore, players from all over the country risked their lives to capture them. But out of 124 attempts, there were 124 failures, which is very sad. So they had no choice but to ask for help abroad. They spent a fortune to hire Indian super recruit Tikhar Vishy. This is a man who has an innate talent for skillful use of a bow. In terms of potential, he could match or even surpass 5 Gilberto Greens. However, Tikhar Vishy was defeated and everyone lost hope that the Lufa Garden would ever be captured, which is how a 22-year-old player with a bright future met his end. And also the gloomy ghost admits that he could be in this guy's place. He has just increased all his values through exercise, so that now all of his stats, with the exception of magic, are over 30. And he thinks that these values are high enough for his level. But even if Tikhar, the rising star, failed the capture, the possibility of a hidden trap in this gate cannot be ruled out. During preparation, the gloomy ghost needs to think through all possible scenarios. However, since he is used to using the freezing skill, it is curious how much this ability will help Junho in a real fight. After this, we find ourselves in the Lufa Garden, a gloomy ghost armed with a spear with a semicircular blade. The only necessary condition for this gate is to destroy absolutely all monsters. Junho doesn't know how many monsters are waiting for him. But if teams of 4 failed, then there was some kind of hidden trap that put them out of action. Our main character noticed something similar to a labyrinth, and stared at it blankly and studied it. The gloomy ghost realized that first he needed to stay away from this suspicious area. The Lufas will appear at night, so now the main character can just relax and wait. Night fell and everything that surrounded the main character shone with a mesmerizing blue light, reminiscent of neon. And at the moment of darkness, unidentified entities crawled out of a field of beautiful flowers, vaguely reminiscent of people. But they did not have one. But they moved quickly, as if they were flying above the ground. As soon as humanoid monsters began to break out of the ground, the hero woke up abruptly, saying to himself that he needed to warn about his appearance. The hero's feelings became acute. He felt calm, as if there were only 2 monsters and there was nothing to worry about for now. The flying freaks didn't notice the dark ghost's appearance, and he sarcastically called it a warm welcome. When suddenly the monster's elastic paw flew at him, resembling a rapidly growing and endless stem. The gloomy ghost delicately sticks the tip of the spear into the monster's limb, and, pushing off from the ground, flies to attack. He soars into the air, collecting around himself an unknown cloud of blue energy, which is clearly visible against the background of a black, starless sky. From a cloud of blue energy, he creates a semblance of an ice spear, which he throws at flying creatures. From such a blow, even the earth shook, not to mention the monsters, which, like confetti, scattered from the explosion in different directions over a huge distance. But there's no way to get rid of it that easily, and as soon as our main character landed, a new wave of flying monsters was already lining up behind him. This is a spear, a skill of the Ice Queen, which the hero is very happy about, since it is quite strong. The paw of one of the monsters rushes past his face, with such high speed that it even creates a trail of fire, which, however, was expected. Destroying 2 monsters was clearly not enough, and Jun-ho is eager to fight again. Pushing off on his feet, as if on springs, the gloomy ghost gets close to his opponents in a matter of seconds and, with just one swing of his spear, halves 3 monsters at once. The main character again noticed that the number of enemies was not decreasing and began to run away, very nervous. While he was running, the paw of one of the flying bastards flew at him right behind him. But the gloomy ghost, having correctly grouped himself, was able to dodge, simultaneously cutting off the monster's hand. And when one of his hands was occupied with a spear, he accumulated energy with the other. At the time of multiple attacks from monsters, Jun-ho managed to create a shield for himself from a cloud of energy, which in fact saved his life. But the defense cracked, and the situation escalated greatly. The hero never thought that it would be so difficult. And as soon as the shield fell, the gloomy ghost, hitting the perfect timing, managed to chop the attackers with a spear. There was only 1 monster left in front of his face, but the hero said that he was very tired, and the tip of his spear was already touching the ground. After all, it's actually tiring, but not so much that you'll fail the mission and die. But something is bothering the hero. The gloomy ghost wandered through the wasteland, among the corpses, and thought that although he had mastered the first-class freezing ability, he could not yet cope with this level of difficulty alone. And I realized that 4 people should definitely be enough for such a task. Among the players who have been trying to capture this gate over the past 9 years, there have been strong guys with huge potential, and talented rookie Tikara Vichy is one of them. After all, judging by what the hero saw in the materials, he could easily kill at least half of the monsters alone, and if he also had teammates with him, then they would definitely be able to capture the gate. However, while the hero finished off the last monster, after which he conquered the Lufa Garden, he did not understand why such a strong player as Vichy could not complete the task, but failed it. Having completed such a difficult task, the hero sat down with a calm soul in the gazebo in the center of the garden, and was amazed at how life flashed before his eyes that night. And he reassured himself that as long as he was alive and well, everything was just fine. He was confused. The gloomy ghost did not understand how he managed to conquer the gates and asked himself. He saw the huge gates. What kind of place was this? Jun-ho began to pass through the high gate, shrouded in time and moss. Under his feet lay corpses, of which after a long time only skeletons remained. There was blood and scattered weapons everywhere, that is, countless traces of fights. But there were more recent dead. The grim spectre assumed that they were all trying to escape from the battlefield through this narrow passage. But in the end, this labyrinth only robbed them of precious time, which was vital for them. If they couldn't handle the influx of monsters, then this place just became a dead end for them. Our main character seems to understand that this is the end, seeing in front of him a huge wall, which is a dead end in this labyrinth, when suddenly he noticed a corpse, on whose knees lay a bow with a shining blue stone in the middle. And if Jun-ho remembers the information from the materials correctly, then this should be the hurricane bow. The hero only bowed to the dead man from the bottom of his heart, regretting the death of the player. And at the same time, apologetically, he decided to take the bow, since of course he would never need it again. Remembering how the hurricane bow works, if you shoot from it, the arrow spins unpredictably in flight, like a butterfly, so the wind raised by the bow was compared to the force of a hurricane, hence the name. The government of India gave it to Tikara Vishy, and in that case it must be him. While the hero was reflecting on everything that was happening, the dead man's diary, which was located under the corpse's left hand, came into his field of vision. He became interested, and he took it. What if the diary contains the name of the owner, in order to verify and establish the identity of the dead man? The gloomy ghost opened the diary and began to read. The first entry was made on April 7, 2044 at 12:40. Already on behalf of the writer, I was instructed to capture the Lufa Garden, located in Korea. Vishy, surprised, asked the guarantors whether he was really being given such a task, and with fire in his eyes he agreed, and said that he would carry it out so that this would not happen. The person who gave the task to Tikara Vishy advised him to think carefully about everything, since this gate could not be captured for many years, saying that the player may simply not return. But the guy just laughed and replied that the Koreans asked him for help, and he could not refuse them, since this contradicts the teachings of the god Vishnu. And Vishy thought that he was now at level 10, and this was his only chance to get into the Lufa Garden. Convincing himself that he had to do this, he asked a girl unknown to us if she would go with him, and she replied that of course she would go, because if the guy was going to go there, then she would follow him anywhere. The girl took Tikara by the hands and said that she believed in him, and repeated that she would follow him anywhere. She also explained that if he had said that he would go alone, she would still have found a way to get to him. But now the girl is happy that Tikara asked her to go with him, and thanked the player. In addition, she said that she had to protect him, to which he responded in surprise, "What else?" Tikara Vishy said thank you to the girl for going with him, and called her name Zaya. And he explained, simultaneously looking her straight in the eyes, that there was no one whom he trusted more than her, and asked the girl if she knew about this. To which Zaya replied that of course she knew, she was his partner. The heroes held hands and said that they would capture the Lufa Garden at any cost. Suddenly we see a child running into the arms of his father, shouting "Daddy," and he joyfully threw back his arms, waiting for the little girl in his arms. He raised Milady high above his head and she asked where he was going again, to which Dad replied that he needed to go to work. And he explained to the little girl that he would return soon. While he was away, he ordered her to obey her grandmother. The girl asked her father when he returned if they would go and see the animals. To which the man, pressing his cheek to the sweet face, said that of course they would go, and once again gave instructions to obey the grandmother and eat well. It turns out that Tikara Vishy was watching all this action, standing behind the wall. Having said goodbye to the girl, the man goes around the corner and shows Tikar, since it's time for them to go, and he, in turn, apologizes to the girl's father for how everything turned out this way. We get into the man's head and see his thoughts, in which only his daughter is present. He thinks that this is the first time he is going on such a long business trip, but he assures himself that everything will be fine, because his grandmother is next to her. And besides, he already promised that he would help Tikara, and his conscience would not allow him to refuse. To which Vishy responded with gratitude. And so the heroes left. The man walked and shouted that he was on a team with a rising star, and that he was definitely waiting to get his share. And Tikara laughed, surprised at how impatiently his comrade was waiting for the task. They called to New Delhi, Indira Gandhi International Airport. And going deeper into the airport, they saw Zaya, who happily waved her hand at them and another teammate of Rome. The heroes greeted each other. Tikara shook hands with Rome, saying that he had not seen him for a long time, to which he replied that he went on the mission only because Zaya persuaded him. Then Junho reads what he wrote already on April 23, also 2044 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Tikara is impatiently training, waiting to enter the Lufa Garden. He's doing great, the rising star noted, looking at his arrows, which 5 out of 5 hit the bullseye. He inhaled the air with pleasure, saying that he had a very good feeling. Then the day changes again, and the gloomy ghost reads the notes, made on April 24, 2044 at 11 o'clock in the afternoon. The players finally entered the Lufa Garden. After the players entered the Lufa Garden, Vishy noticed that it was unusually beautiful here and noted that it was the first time they had seen such a gate. But I remembered that this was still a dungeon and I couldn't be distracted here. Tikara gathered the players in a circle and invited them to look around first. Then the recording continues on the same date, but at night, when beautiful flowers begin to shine. Players noticed that there were only 8 monsters, and thought that this was too few. But as one would expect, there were more and more monsters every second, and after a minute there were already 32 of them. They fought back as best they could. The girl fought with the help of magic. Tikura Vishi shot the monsters with a bow, and the girl's father fought hand to hand, having only a sword in his arsenal. Suddenly, one of the monsters, having enormous elasticity in its arms, hit the swordsman directly, causing the whole team to turn their gazes on him. The players saved the wounded man and dragged him into the labyrinth, but Tikura did not follow them, but fought off the monsters. While the rising star was killing monsters, I noticed a pattern that as soon as they destroyed the monsters, their number doubled, and I realized for myself that complete madness was happening in this dungeon. Takura's hand and asked him to take care of his daughter, after which he died from injuries incompatible with life, leaving Vishi to sit in his pool of blood and grieve. Next, the diary tells us about the next day, April 25th, 2044 at 5:29. The players buried the swordsman, as befits, with a cross on the grave, and Tikura was completely depressed, because he had lost one of his comrades, whom, by the way, he himself had called for this task. After which we are already shown the evening, when the sun was setting behind the horizon, and the rising star was already sitting and praying. He asked the great Shiva so that the hero could continue his notes the next day. The night flew by and into the morning. The heroes were wildly tired of resting, lying on the ground. Then Tikura took his notebook and wrote down that last night they destroyed the 4th invasion of the Luffs, and today the 5th began, and there were about 120 of them. Vishi said that they fought for their lives and there are only about 40 Luffs left, and the hero can handle that many himself. He looked at Zaya and convinced himself that today they would definitely be able to get out of this damn Luffy garden. That same night, on an almost empty field, not counting the corpses of the creatures, Tikura held the dead Zaya in his hand and begged that there would not be a 6th invasion. The hero was in terrible pain, because he had lost everyone he loved so much, his comrades, and the main loss for him was Zaya. Yes, he promised to capture the gates, but at what cost? For him there is no point in this without a girl. When suddenly an unknown person appeared behind the hero, a red dagger was shining in his hand, from which fresh blood was dripping, and in the hope of killing the rising star, an unknown person jumped on him, saying that it was time to die. But even the hero, who had lost his vigilance, noticed in the reflection of Zaya's ball the reflection of a stranger, and he managed to jump away, injuring only his hand, forgetting about the pain for a while. And the bastard, with a disgusting grin on his face, told Tikura that he really was the rising star of India once he managed to dodge. But this bastard turned out to be his teammate Ram, whose eyes did not look like human ones. It seems his friend became a demon. The hero was unable to restrain his emotions, and shouted at Ram, calling him a liar. He did not understand how he could turn out to be a demon because Zaya brought him here. To which the demonic offspring replied that he had not heard anything more stupid and explained that everything was simple. Zaya was stupid, just like Tikura. However, Ram did not know that there were so many Luffs living here, and thought that it was probably worth helping the hero's friends who just died, forcing the demon into danger. Hearing all this, Vishi was not just furious, but they experienced many terrible feelings, not even finding words of insult for the asshole. But he only looked at the hero with a calm expression and ordered him to give up the bow and go to his friends in the other world. Tikura's face changed sharply as he noticed that 6th wave of Luffs behind Ram's back. But he didn't understand anything, and asked mockingly what was wrong with the hero's face, because no matter how angry he was still afraid of death. And Tikura ran away, and Ram looked at all this and said that he did not think that he would do this. But the hero still cannot escape death, since the blade was poisoned, which means that Vishi will die in any case. In complete calm, the demon turns his head back, hearing strange rustling sounds behind him. But he didn't have time to do anything, as the 6th invasion of monsters had already begun. While Tikura Vishi was running away, he realized that he was no longer feeling his hand, and this was very bad. He ran into the labyrinth, refusing to believe that he would die so easily. The bleeding player, who is about to die, comes face to face with a dead end, and he continued to refuse to believe that everything would end like this. The completely desperate hero leaned on one of the walls of the labyrinth and wrote in a notebook that he no longer felt his right hand, and it seemed that the demon's sword was indeed smeared with poison. And he realized that it didn't matter whether it was loofahs or poison, he would still die. And if anyone found this diary, he asked them to tell their families that they were all asking for forgiveness. This is how the life of the rising star of India, who showed great promise, ended. The gloomy ghost digested what he read. Junho thought that was the end, but noticed a few more pages, in which Chikara said that if his comrades had survived, they would have been able to capture the gate, and that it was all because of the demon. And the last thing Vishy wrote was a request to the great Shiva to rest in peace, and for sinners to burn in hell, begging him to take revenge on the dying warrior. The gloomy ghost thanked the player, because thanks to him he understood everything. The number of monsters depends on the number of players who entered, which is why when the gloomy ghost came alone, there weren't many monsters. And having come here with 3 more players, perhaps everything would not have ended so rosy. Junho decided to take the dead man's diary with him, and moved it to his inventory. As for the hurricane bow, the hero decided to borrow it for a while. But he said that he takes the bow for a reason. In return he will take revenge on these damned demons. The gloomy ghost wished the young hero of India to rest in peace and left the labyrinth. After such difficult events, we are returned to the Players Association building. Taka came to Junho and said that he was right, showing newspapers and magazines that the whole world knows who captured the unconquered gates. The upset hero, leaning on his arm, said that he had already said that it would be so, and the president added that the player couldn't even imagine how much he wanted to tell everyone at work. But Junho didn't like it all, and he asked Taku if it was necessary to tell everyone about it early in the morning, because the president could convey everything through Vita, to which he replied that it would be more polite to say it in person. And to the same gloomy ghost, the Indian government conveyed a message. They are grateful for the return of Tikara Vishy's diary, which revealed what others theorized about, and the families of the players were informed, as Tikara bequeathed. Hearing this, the hero calmed down, as he realized that he had done a good deed. Taka told the hero that he need not hide his joy, to which he replied, "I am really happy that the relatives of the victims found out the truth," after which the president said that it was still a little offensive, and Junho asked a logical question, why? And he explained that it was a hurricane. It was created as a national weapon intended for the defense of India, and now it has disappeared from Tikara Vishy's inventory. The gloomy ghost, after thinking a little, decided to show Taku his find, which turns out to be a national weapon. And when the president saw the bow, he simply stood in a stupor, asking the hero if he was crazy. And then he started yelling at the hero, asking why he was holding him in his hands now, and Junho covered his ears, because Taku was really yelling too loudly. The president shouted that this weapon belonged to the Indian government, and it was necessary to at least hide it properly. But the player said not to strain and explained that he would use it a little and return it. In this connection, Taku clarified what the hero would then say to the Indian government, and sarcastically suggested that he would probably say that the late Tikara handed him over to the hands of the gate. But be that as it may, the president ordered the hero to come up with something, to which he replied that there was no need to worry, since he would be careful with the bow. Taka would have shouted, because everyone thought that the bow was lost, but that's not what the hero meant. And the fact that with the help of this weapon he will attract a demon, to which the president recalled how the hero said that he died at the gate. And Junho suggested that perhaps the demon Ram was not the only one who was hunting for the bow. Besides, the demon had probably already read articles about how the hurricane was lost in the gate. However, he is not so stupid as to believe it so easily, because for this bastard, the thing is much more important than human life. And then he will understand that the bow is in the hands of the hero, and will come for it. And Taka noticed that Junho is right, and also said that he remembered here about one demon, the devil called Sinara. He is known for his collection of bows, and the hero realized who everyone was talking about, because the demon seems to think too much of himself. Thanks to his wonderful self-confidence and reckless actions, Sinara is already being sought all over the world. The president noted that the devil could not get into the Lufa garden on his own, since this gate can only be entered with level 10. And the hero realized that the demon would start looking for him, and the next time he entered the conquered gate, he would try to grab the player there and noticed that the devil was even stronger than Tikara. Hearing this, Diaka became furious, saying that then Junho was in great danger and he needed to tell the Indian government. But the gloomy ghost asked the president to calm down, since he would start preparations right now and there would be no problems. Besides, the demon would have a hard time dealing with Junho, if at all. After which Taka said that if he were in the place of the hero, he would also think no. He put his hand on the gloomy ghost's shoulder and said that he was still very worried about his friend. But he calmed him down and asked him not to forget that he is the incomparable Seo Jun-ho. He advised me not to worry and said that the events that happened 25 years ago would under no circumstances be repeated. The president seemed to calm down, reminding the hero that he had not changed a bit, to which he replied that he is what he is. Suddenly Taki gets a call, and while the gloomy ghost looks blankly at his friend, who is surprised by what he heard, the president continues to talk with the unknown. The guy tells someone on the other side of the line that this is not part of their plans, and that of course he will tell Seo Jun everything. The hero asked in bewilderment what was happening, and Taku replied that the journalists were flocking like flies, since they found out that Jun-ho is the player who captured the gate, and now they want to interview him. In connection with the above, the hero unexpectedly asked the president not to refuse journalists, to which he asked why, and the guy replied that since he couldn't avoid a battle with demons, maybe he could at least choose the place of the battle on his own, after which he proposed to the president of the Players Association to hold a conference in his honor. Apparently Taku agreed, as the next shot takes us to a press conference, on which a huge number of journalists sat and noticed that there have not been such newcomers for a long time, and it is possible that this is the next star of Korea, like Kim Woo-jun and Shin Sung-hyun. Moreover, the player knows how to attract attention to himself, and even among many treasures, he is the most shining pebble. When suddenly Jun-ho enters the hall and immediate orders are heard to photograph the star. But the appearance was not so grandiose, since the hero came out in home clothes and slippers, after which everyone began to discuss whether it was the one who conquered the gate, or just some guy who wandered in by mistake. Jun-ho noticed that everyone was staring at him strangely, and realized that most likely he needed to change into something more formal. But the hero would not have done this, because when he was a gloomy ghost he often had to strain himself, so often that he was stupidly sick of it. Jun-ho walked up to the microphone and greeted everyone in the room, informing everyone that the conference would last 30 minutes, after which everyone began to raise their hands and ask for answers to their questions, of which there were an infinite number. But the hero cut them off, warning them that first he wanted to say a few words about the curse of Dawn Gate, and the journalists noticed that this was clearly not the first time the player had been in such a situation, and although you couldn't tell from him, he was quite experienced. The conference was already coming to an end, and the hero said that he would answer the last question, and it asked whether he had decided which gate he would enter next time, and the gloomy ghost replied that he had not decided yet. There was one gate where he really wanted to go, but because of his low level he could not do this yet. The player was asked what kind of place this was, and he replied that it was the gate to the Eastern Sea, from which, after hearing what they heard, the journalists threw away their notebooks and pens and began photographing the hero. Our main character was asked if he was talking about the same gate of the Eastern Sea, since this is the last unconquered gate of Korea, and if the player is able to capture it, then he will have 3 very difficult missions, and no one has ever had such achievements. To which Jun-ho simply made a sweet face, smiled and said that the journalist was right. All the journalists were speechless, as they had never seen such a strong player, such confidence and calmness. The girl noticed that the strongest first-class monster lived in these gates and asked the hero what he thought about it. Another journalist informed everyone that the association had long been discussing the issue of assigning first place to this gate in terms of complexity, but it seemed to him that this was too much. Assessing what was said, the gloomy ghost understood why this gate caused such a negative reaction in people, all because of the boss living in it. His strength is noticeably different from that of ordinary monsters, incredible power, some of them even turn ordinary undead into their hearing and command them. However, the hero noted that even if he fights with a first-class monster, he will still win. We are taken to a room of 2 strangers. One of them tells the other that people are making a big fuss about a newcomer, to which he responds that in turn, this proves how important the unconquered gate is to people. The guy with glasses suggested that the other guy, if he was interested, should contact the first floor, to which he replied that this does not interest him at all yet, so he will not contact anyone. And he explained that when something unusual happens, people call it an accident, and if it happens a second time, they call it a skill. And he believes that it is necessary to judge only after the 3rd time. You don't even have to remember the names of those who don't make it to the 3rd time. The bespectacled guy's hands began to shake, and he said that he understood, and if the player Seo Jun-ho performed a miracle again, he would receive a personal invitation from the main chairman, Shin Sung-hyun, to the Takibi Guild. After this interesting conversation, we return to the gloomy ghost, who is choosing something with Taku, having a huge amount of papers on the table. These papers turned out to be requests, the consequences of the conference, because now Jun-ho is a superstar. The president reads the order and notes that it is very difficult to find a task so that all 3 conditions are suitable. And this is precisely the big reward with experience points, and the difficulty level is relatively low, and the pay is not bad. Jun-ho suggested omitting the 3rd condition, but Taku does not agree with them, because his relevance in the future directly depends on the first order. After which he handed the hero one of the letters. It was an order from a father whose daughter was terminally ill, and to save her, it is necessary to find a medicine called the Heart of the Flaming Fox. The gloomy ghost replied that he had not heard about this medicine for a long time, and the president recalled that the hero fought with her only half a year after he first became a player, and Jun-ho replied that he almost died then. After which Taka said that it would be faster to take a look for himself and directed the player to the gate, which is located in Korea and is called the Heavenly Fox. And the president added that these gates arose only 4 months ago, so they had not yet received the status of unconquered, but at least the monster in them had already absorbed 7 teams. Jun-ho said that when he performed as a gloomy ghost, the conditions were not so harsh, as the monster also became stronger. And Taka tried to reassure the hero, saying that everything is not as difficult as he imagines, because now the level of the players has increased. After which the player remembered that since his return he had not yet met worthy players, so he could not say anything, but since his friend was so sure, he agreed. Taka said that then we need to take on this assignment, and at the same time test the skills of the younger ones, and the president exhaled, informing Jun-ho that in fact this letter was from his acquaintance. When the gloomy ghost heard this, he opened his mouth wide and wanted to know with genuine interest what kind of person he was. And the president asked if the hero knew a company like Manhua Group. This is the man's chairman. The player clarified if he was Choi's son Man-hyuk is this, but Dyaku corrects him, saying that he is talking about Choi Pil-ho's second son. While the friends were talking, there was a sudden knock on their door, thereby interrupting the conversation. How a beautiful girl in a skirt came into the room and asked the president if he had called her. It was Mrs. Cha Chiun. Taka greeted her and asked her to come to them, explaining to the guy that from now on the girl would be his secretary and manager. The boy looked at the beauty and thought that if Taka continued to personally deal with his affairs, it would arouse suspicion. But everything is fine and there is nothing to be afraid of. The hero and Cha Shirun shook hands, after which the girl said that she was pleased to meet Jun-ho, and he answered her in the same way. Taku immediately began talking about work issues and notified the hero, since they need to organize a meeting of the Manhwa group, advised them to discuss everything with Cha Shirun, since she is capable and can be relied on. After which the girl thanked the president for such kind words. The president said that the guys could go, expecting good results from them, and they said goodbye to the head. And when the newly made partners were driving in the car, the girl asked the hero if he was familiar with the Manhwa Group company, to which Jun-ho replied that he knew, because it was number 1 in Korea, after which the manager added that they are known for timely tax payments and protecting the privacy of the royal family. However, tragedy struck their ideal world as Chairman Choi Pil-ho's daughter was diagnosed with 9-ene-gap syndrome, which is actually a very rare disease that occurs in people with high-ene energy, and the only way to recover is to transplant something with the same high energy into the body. And these items are precisely the core of the fiery fox, and reminded that 29 years ago a gloomy ghost, the best player, defeated the fox, thereby confirming his outstanding abilities. The girl noted that she admired the gloomy ghost, after which Jun-ho began to sweat a little and became very embarrassed. The girl noticed this and asked the hero why he looked so strange, and the guy replied that he was simply touched by the words about that truly outstanding player. As soon as the partners arrived at the chairman's house, Jun-ho noticed that nothing had changed here at all. The manager asked in surprise if the hero had been here, to which he replied that he had been, but for a very long time. After which she asked the guy to wait outside while she checked whether their agreement regarding the meeting was valid. Suddenly the doors opened and the chairman greeted the hero, saying that he had been looking forward to him. The girl was stunned when Chairman Choi Pil-ho himself came out to them, but the hero simply said his name, expressing a sense of pride for having met such a great person for him. The chairman walked up to the guy, shook his hand and said that in front of him stands a hero who captured the gate to ensure the safety of citizens, which is why it is also a great honor for him to meet Junho. Suddenly the man began to cry, saying that his last wish was to save his daughter from this terrible disease, and bowed to the gloomy ghost, after which he asked his partners to go into the house. And while they were entering, Junho clarified whether the chairman needed the core of the fiery fox. And only when everyone sat down, the man replied that everything was exactly like that. Having studied a fair amount of information, he learned about a case of anicaps syndrome in France, where the core of the fiery fox was used for treatment. The man decided to get straight to the point, and said that he was offering 1.5 billion won as a reward. They will also provide the material assistance necessary to capture the gate, and everything that may be required to obtain the core. The girl, to put it mildly, was shocked by the amount offered and was sure that Junho would agree. But the guy replied that these conditions did not suit him. After hearing what he heard, the chairman fell into horror and repeated the name of the hero so that he would repeat what he said again. And worried, because Junho was the last hope, he even began to offer 3 billion won, asking whether this amount would be enough. But the hero reassured the man, and said that he did not mean the amount, since 1 billion won was enough for him. After which the chairman wanted to know the reason for the refusal and asked the hero about it, and then he collected his thoughts and decided to explain. After all, in the past, a gloomy ghost sold the core for 10 billion won to a billionaire from France. He offered to give all his fortune to save his dying daughter, but the player refused and only took the money. The hero extended his hand to the man, and said that he had exactly the same reason, since you can't profit from people who just want to save their family. After some time, the partners went back to the Players' Association. Upon arrival, Junho got out of the car, and the manager told him that he did not have to wait for her as she needed to park. Suddenly, the girl asked the guy how he knew about the story about the dark ghost, and suggested that perhaps he learned it from the president, to which the hero was a little stunned, but agreed, adding that President Taku and the gloomy ghost were close friends. And he asked Cha if she believed in this story, since all the people said that the gloomy ghost was heartless, to which she replied that if he were so empty inside, he would never have acted like that, and therefore considers him a good-natured person. Junho asked about the good guy, and she answered that that was exactly the case, and after the hero's words, she only became even more convinced of this. And she said that she heard how the parents of the gloomy ghost died right before his eyes and, in her opinion, he took the 10 billion won received for the core only because the customer was rich. Otherwise she thinks that the player would not have taken the money at all. Because a person trying his best to save his family sincerely wishes that no one would experience such suffering, and added that except for him, no one can know for sure. Next, Junho went up to Taku, who asked him how he liked Lady Cha, to which the hero replied that he could not say anything about her, since he spent only 2 hours with her, but at first glance she seemed good, and the president added that soon the guy would find out what she was really worth. Ms. Cha is a talented specialist, so she could easily get a job in a large company or some famous guild, and she works here only because the gloomy ghost belongs to the association. Junho finally asked where they were going, and Taka thought the little bastard was embarrassed, so he changed the subject. Opening a door unknown to the hero, the president said that if he was going to fight a powerful monster, like a fiery fox, he will need decent equipment, and showed a huge warehouse of the best weapons located at the Players' Association. After all, over the past 25 years, science has advanced far, and weapons naturally followed right behind it. Weapons were invented that the hero could not even think about before, and the level of player safety has increased noticeably. After which Taku walked up to one of the stands and took a sword, which he threw to the hero so that he could see what improvements there were. He suggested that the hero try to use magic on this sword, and the guy asked again. Apparently he had not often seen such blades. The gloomy ghost raised the sword up, after which it shone with a violet flame, emitting frantic energy, which the hero himself did not expect and was afraid. But he took control of everything and thought that even when using a small amount, the magic seemed to envelop the sword and recreate its shape, which would make skinning the orc much easier. Then the president showed the hero one of the blades and said that if the hero uses magic on it, he will receive a magic shield, and the guy noticed that it is some kind of magic bomb, which means that nowadays players only use such weapons. And Taka confirmed the guy's guesses, because if the weapon is highly effective and modern, why not use it? After which Junho clarified whether ordinary players can even use it, but the president replied that he is not sure, but knows for sure that they use customized weapon. The hero remembered the past, and said that this weapon is just a toy in the face of real monsters. Since these powerful creatures are capable of destroying even the player's magical circulation, this weapon is therefore useless in battle, and he asked Taku if he knew why low-level players come across weak monsters. The president suggested that if a strong monster appeared, everyone would simply die, and Junho said that he said it correctly. It is very ironic, and that in relation to such moments, this system is quite fair. Continuing that the player must constantly develop, meeting with other players of his level, so that, in the future, meeting a strong opponent, he can survive using his strength and accumulated experience. And the disappointed Taka asked the hero if he thought that this weapon was ineffective against high-level monsters, and he gave him an affirmative answer, after which the president said that the guy was right, because players who rely solely on weapons will never be able to achieve anything worthwhile, but we cannot exclude the fact that they can be useful for capturing some enemies. In this connection, the gloomy ghost replied that this was quite possible, since everything depended on the monster. When he suddenly saw in the corner of the warehouse a box on which lay a sword that was still unknown to him, Junho asked the president what it was, and he told him that this sword was made of new high-quality material, but it did not have any abilities, so Taka removed it from his sight. Suddenly the gloomy ghost made a lightning-fast dash with his sword, greatly frightening the president, and he said that with all these fancy toys the association is blocking the limitless growth opportunities of the players. One day passes and we move into the thick of things, to the very unconquered gate that Junho was about to enter. There were a huge number of reporters and players on the spot. The gloomy ghost was sitting in the car with the manager. She handed him a mug of hot tea and said that everyone was excited about the mission to capture the core of the fiery fox, and that 26 more players would enter with him, some sent from the guild. And he, in turn, assessing the situation, sipped a hot drink from a thermos and thought about the upcoming task. After drinking, the hero relaxed and noted that it was very tasty, and the girl noticed that it was lavender tea. The gloomy ghost looked at the mug of tea and said that when he returns, he wants to drink it again. And while getting out of the car, he added that tomorrow he would need to get up early in order to have time to get ready. The girl asked in bewilderment why, and the hero replied that after capturing the gates, he would have no end to his assignments. Junho came out to reporters. They asked him if it was true that he was carrying out an order for a famous person from the Manhwa group and whether this was the first time he had participated in a capture together with other players, and finally whether the hero was confident that he could defeat the fiery fox. She's a boss monster after all. While people were asking the guy questions, at this time other players were discussing him, because guys like them always stay on the sidelines, but the girl player replied that recently Junho is the most talked about player, and everyone wants to write an article about him. Next, the guys wondered if it was true that this skinny kid Junho captured the gate twice, because it's hard to believe, since his weapon looks antediluvian. But there must be something else, he won't enter the gate with this. A little later, after the journalists announced the end of the interview, the other players began to slowly gather. And finally, all the players entered the conquered gate, hoping to capture something that had not been possible before. Time 11:28. Entrance to the Burning Dunes Gate. Everyone is already on the other side of the portal. As soon as the players entered, they were shocked that there was a damn desert all around, which was bad, as their feet got stuck in the sand. And suddenly, among the crowd of ordinary soldiers, one of them shouted, asking for the attention of the others. Everyone looked at him questioningly, because no one knew anything about this player. After which the guy introduced himself, calling himself Manhwa, a member of the Korean Guild 13th rank Chonghai. The rest of the players were dumbfounded by the fact that Chonghai himself from the guild was participating in the capture. The guy said that since everyone knows that it is impossible to cope in such a place alone, and also that in gates with such high complexity they need to avoid strife so as not to endanger each other, so he said that he wanted to offer something, namely, 10 million won to everyone who follows the guild's instructions during the capture, and in return, the guild would like to claim the main reward, the core of a fiery fox. From what they heard, everyone became wildly angry, because the guild wants to take the heart of the fiery fox for themselves, but in return only offers 10 million won, and that even if all the participants agree, they will spend less than 300 million won, and this will not work. While the players were discussing what was happening, Chonghai continued that the guild truly cares about the players, and if someone changes their mind in the future, they will only be able to give 500,000 won. Suddenly everyone started raising their hands and joining the guild, hoping to make good money, and someone even asked if they would share the food. And a guy from the guild notices a gloomy ghost walking up a sandy hill alone. Then he asked if the player Seo Jun-ho would like to join their huge team, to which the hero replied that he had plans to act separately from the others. Watching this, the fat man said with a grin that Jun-ho is called their hope, a genius, and if he decided to fight in such a place alone. Before Fatty could finish speaking, Chong-ha interrupted the commander and warned him not to worry about him, because he himself had never done this. After some time, the order to prepare was sounded and all the players who would leave the guild team began to gather, while the gloomy ghost walked alone along the sand dunes, covering his face from the sand flying into him and from the scorching sun. And he remembered that the fiery fox, a monster, something between monsters and a mythical creature, a boss monster that had grown 9 tails for itself in more than 1,000 years. After all the tails grew, she rose above the clouds and became a 1,000-year-old fox. The number of soldiers controlled by the fiery fox, so to speak, is directly proportional to the number of tails. And the hero wondered how many tails the fox in these gates had and decided for now to find a place to hide. The guild troop calmly walked along the sand dunes, scooping up sand with their boots, and Chong-ha noticed something strange. The surface of the sand stretched, forming a small hill that looked very suspicious. Suddenly a flock of fiery foxes jumped out of it, and quick commands were heard, preparing for a fight with monsters. Chong-ha ordered the other players not to panic, but to wait for his order. He counted that there were about 30 fire foxes, and when the foxes got close enough to attack, the guy ordered to engage in battle. The players from the guild activated what looked like an electric fence around them. Therefore, all the fire foxes that wanted to get close to the players were killed by huge charges of electricity. The rest of the ordinary soldiers saw everything that was happening and were surprised that it worked, because they had never seen anything like this before. Chong-ha felt his strength, and said that the bastards were keeping their eyes open, because this is not the age of antediluvian weapons and primitive traps. And heading towards his opponents, he shouted for them to see the power of humanity's technologies on the 2nd floor. After which, some time later, he told the fat commander that they had already destroyed more than half of the foxes, to which he replied that if they continue like this, it will only be a matter of time before the fiery fox is caught. Chong-ha advised him to kill at least one monster every time he opened his mouth, with a great mindset to win. The rest of the players also said that they were in vain nervous about this gate, because nothing is possible in it, and one of them noticed that this was all because they joined the Chong-ha guild. Suddenly, casting a large shadow, a fiery fox of enormous size appeared to the players on the battlefield. Ordinary fools began to shout that a fiery fox had appeared, as if it could not be seen with the naked eye. And after she saw the corpses of the rest of the foxes, she became indescribably furious. Everyone received a notification that they had encountered the boss of the burning dunes, the flame fox. The players experienced wild fear and horror. Counting the number of tails the fox had, there were 9 of them, and the only one who defeated such a beast was a gloomy ghost. But then she had only 6 tails. But Chong-ha did not give in to panic and ordered everyone to gather and stay in line, focusing on attacking the monster. The players, shaking with fear, convinced themselves of victory, since the guild was with them, and they would be able to defeat the boss monster. After which Chong-ha, full of confidence, remembered that the animal would die only from a blow to the head or heart. And he was ready for battle, since they had prepared a trap that was several times stronger than the one they had used before, and if the fox got caught, he would no longer be able to free himself. Insanely inspired by victory, he told himself that today he would defeat the fiery fox and surpass the darkest ghost. After which the fox ran towards the players, releasing huge clouds of bright red flame from its mouth.